There we go. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me this afternoon to talk about the Wheel of the Year, something near and dear to our hearts here in Atheopaganism. And we'll be talking about what it is, how people organize them in different ways, and how you can get started on developing your own unique Wheel of the Year. Those are the things we're going to be talking about today. Um, Wanted to give you a brief introduction to who I am first. My name is Mark, and I am an author, poet, singer, ritualist, and I like to tell myself I'm a critical thinker. I wrote the Atheopaganism book and the follow on to that called Round We Dance, which is more of a how to kind of book. I work professionally in environmental advocacy. I work for a California statewide organization that works to protect natural landscapes. I have been an atheist all my life and a science enthusiast. I'm very interested in the world and the universe that we live in. And I live in the wine country of Northern California. And for 37 years, I have been practicing with the North American pagan community, despite being an atheist and a critical thinker and science enthusiast, which is where atheopaganism originally came from. So that's a little bit about me. What I'm not, which probably goes without saying, but I always say it anyway, just in case. I am not a guru. I am not a spiritual teacher or a cult leader or any of those things. I I am not in charge of atheopaganism. Um, and welcome, Bryn. We're just getting started. Um, So I am not the head or authority of atheopaganism. I'm nothing like even close to infallible. And I'm not telling you what to do. Your atheopaganism is yours alone, and you can figure out how best to celebrate that and what works best for you spiritually. But your agency matters to me. It's important to me, and I want to make sure you understand that. So, having introduced myself, hello, are you going to go? The Wheel of the Year. What is it? Well, very, very abstractly and simply put, the Wheel of the Year is a set of holidays celebrating a seasonal cycle over the course of a given year, which is rooted in the astronomical calendar of the Earth. So the the foundations of the wheel of the year, any wheel of the year, is the equinoxes and the solstices, which are astronomical events that happen to everybody, whether they know it or not. There is the longest day of the year, which is the summer solstice. There's the shortest day of the year, which is the winter solstice. Um, and then there are the midpoints between, which are the equinoxes, where the day and the night are of equal distance, at least at the equator. And so a wheel of the year is a cycle of holidays celebrating those dates and then usually the midpoints between those dates as well to create a total of 8 holidays. So why observe the wheel of the year? What's the point? Well, to start with, because people need special days. People need holidays that have meaning to them and where they get to celebrate and they get to gather together with their loved ones. That's just a basic human social need. Every culture in the world has them, and we're no different. And the Wheel of the Year is founded on verifiable scientific facts that apply to everyone. So it's not arbitrary. You don't have to believe in a given mythological narrative or anything supernatural in order to celebrate the Wheel of the Year. And it's fun. Holidays are fun. You can create rituals that are wonderful activities to do with your friends or do by yourself. It's pleasurable and fun, and in atheopaganism, we believe pleasure is good for you. So as long as it's not exploitative of anyone else or the earth, pleasure, go and get some because it's good for you. And finally, because the wheel of the year can be profound and meaningful, and we'll go into more of that in a while. So there are multiple approaches to the wheel of the year, and this is kind of the meat of the talk here. Um, Being a cycle rooted in the astronomical calendar of the year can mean a lot of different things. It can mean that you're celebrating the sun cycle, which is the cycle of increasing light and then the maximum light and then increasing darkness, and observing those solstices and equinoxes and the points between. It can mean It can mean that you're celebrating the agricultural cycle, which begins with things being fallow and then preparing and sharpening your tools and then planting seeds and then the seeds sprouting and then growth and then harvest festivals, the grain harvest and then the fruit and vegetable harvest and finally the flesh harvest of Hallows, of the October holiday. You can use it to celebrate the life cycle of a person: birth, infancy, childhood, young adulthood or teenage, adulthood, middle age, elderhood, and death. There's another, 8 stations of life that you can create your wheel of the year around. And then you can do genealogical or natural event holidays, which aren't set on a specific date. It's more about what's happening in the world around you. So, for example, in places that snow, many people celebrate the first snow of the year. Where I am, we celebrate the first rain because we go for months without any rain and then it finally comes back. But you can celebrate the arrival of a particular kind of migratory bird, or the first time that you see a tree where the leaves are starting to turn, or the first ripe berries on a particular bush. Paying attention to the natural world is a really important aspect of Atheopaganism because it helps us to be more connected to the cycles of nature and to feel more integrated as a part of the broader universe. And so creating a cycle of holidays that taps into these special, even if subtle, small events, is another approach to a wheel of the year. And then some pagans also use mythic or cultural cycles. Wicca has a whole story about the goddess and the oak king and the holly king. There are many of these sort of mythic and cultural cycles. I don't use any of those, because, well, for a lot of reasons, but because I don't believe in supernatural beings or in gods or spirits or any of those kinds of things. I don't find those stories to be as compelling as the ones that I've just listed. So Atheopaganism, the Wheel of the Year is celebrated by pagans all over the place, and there are about 2 million pagans in the United States, most of them solitary, but some of them celebrating in groups or members of organizations. Atheopaganism is a naturalistic version of paganism, which means that we believe that the universe is an unconscious process that is unfolding according to laws of physics, that there's nothing supernatural, and that we can apply our critical thinking and our understanding of evidence to try to understand everything that's happening in the universe. So that's what I just said. It's cosmologically naturalistic. It's culturally neutral. As I created, now I'm talking about for myself here, okay? When I created Atheopaganism, it was not intended to be for anybody else. It was just for me. And I was really surprised when other people started showing up and saying, yeah, I want to do that with you. That sounds exactly like what I believe. So when I created Atheopaganism, I deliberately did not draw forward anything from prior cultures or marginalized cultures. So I don't use Celtic names for the holidays around the Wheel of the Year. I don't use symbols from the Norse or from the Egyptians or from the Greeks. And that's deliberate. If you feel a resonance with those kinds of traditions, that's fine. You can incorporate that stuff into your practice. I just don't. I think about Atheopaganism as a modern religion that is forward looking rather than backward looking. And so I deliberately stripped all of those Celtic words and so forth out of the practice that I designed for myself. We have a very DIY ethic. Under, with an understanding that the supernatural probably doesn't exist, we're not doing our practice to try to please some deities or to appease some spirits or to meet some kind of spiritual requirement of the universe. This is entirely about what works for you. And that means that you can create the wheel of the year and the personal practice and the the joy and celebration that specifically speaks to you, and that will be unique. It'll be different than for anyone else. So here are some examples of sort of symbol sets that people have used for various kinds of celebrations around the course of the wheel of the year. This is a set of symbols uh, for the February holiday, the beginning of February, which is the midpoint between the winter solstice and the spring equinox. And you can see this is very peaceful and very pretty. Um, One of the things about creating altars or focuses, as we call them in Atheopaganism, um, for for these holidays is that we can draw forth these wonderful symbols from nature and whatever speaks to us. These are snowdrops which bloom at the time of year when this holiday happens. Nuts that can be saved from the trees, and just some lovely things. And this takes us into the spring equinox, and of course we recognize colored eggs from the Christian overculture's celebration of Easter. But the dyeing of eggs is a very pagan tradition, and it goes way, way back in, especially in Eastern Europe, in Ukraine and Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. This is a very traditional thing to do at this time of year, and to celebrate the springtime. And it kind of makes sense that we associate the springtime with eggs because that is really pretty much the first source of protein that nature presents after the long cold of winter when spring is finally breaking. And here we are with a maypole at May Day, which is the point between the spring equinox and the summer solstice. That's a very traditional, found throughout Europe thing to do and a very fun activity. Here are some people jumping over a fire at their wedding, which often happens, weddings often happen in June, which is when the summer solstice is. So it's kind of a celebration of the longest day of the year. It's actually my wedding anniversary is June 21st, the summer solstice. And here is a first harvest display where the grain is harvested. So there's bread and there's ears of barley, and sunflowers, which are also blooming at the time of the holiday at the beginning of August, which is between the summer solstice and the autumn equinox. And as the year draws down, we have the harvest festival, uh, which is the autumn equinox that is happening today. And so I wish all of you a very happy autumnal equinox. This is the day when the night and the day are of equal lengths at the equator. And so it is the moment that we are moving into the dark half of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. And then finally, we come around to the midpoint between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice, and that is what we call Hallows. Some pagans call it Samhain, which is an Irish word for the month of November. There are various names for this holiday, and it has been Christianized and commercialized as Halloween. So here are some approaches to creating your wheel of the year. I talked before about phenology and phenology journaling. What I have found is a very effective way to develop your wheel of the year is to spend a year marking down on a daily basis what you notice in nature. And sometimes it won't be very much. But if you see a particular bird, or you notice a particular plant is blooming, or any of those kinds of things, if you jot it down, after a year, you'll notice a pattern, a cycle of growth, and uh, of growth and reproduction and then death. And all of those things are really good fodder for creating your wheel of the year. You can choose one or more of those cycles that I described to observe. My big focuses for the wheel of the year are, uh, first of all, the cycle of light and darkness, the sun cycle. Secondly, the life cycle, the cycle of a human life. I consider each of the stations on the wheel of the year to be dedicated to a particular age group in the community. And so they are sort of the guests of honor for that celebration. So for example, right now at the festival that I call Harvest, it is the elderly that we celebrate. Because the next station, which is Hallows, is death. So this is the time of year when we celebrate, hopefully, the wisdom that people gain as they become older, and all that they've contributed to the world in the course of their living. You can also add in commemorative days that don't have anything to do with cycles. You can add your birthday. Pi Day is very popular. That's 3.14, or March 14th. That's also Einstein's birthday, which would seem to be of appeal to many atheopagans. But it's really more than anything else an excuse to eat pie. Yuri's Night in April, which is the anniversary of when Yuri Gagarin first went into orbit in space, was the moment that we left the Earth for the first time. And many planetariums and science museums have special events for Yuri's Night in order to commemorate that. But whatever seems important to you. I know people who celebrate Carl Sagan's birthday. Um, whatever whatever you find meaningful can be a part of your cycle of the wheel of the year. And so I wanted to show some examples. Here's a very simple one. Uh, so starts at the winter solstice on December 21st, and then at the beginning of February is what's called brightening, which is the term that I use for it now as well. It's when we first notice that the days are definitely longer. We're not in the depth of winter anymore, but it's still plenty cold. This author has defined it as the festival of frost. Then comes the spring equinox with the colored eggs, May Day, or the festival of flowers, the summer solstice, or longest day, and then dimming at the beginning of August, which is the festival of fruits, because many fruits and berries come ripe right around then. Um, and it's dimming because we notice that the days aren't as long as they were at a month and a half before at the summer solstice. Then comes the fall equinox, and then Hallows, the festival of the fallen. So that's the time when we remember ancestors and those who have died and gone before us, the gifts that they've given us, and how much we loved them, and just reflect on mortality, on the fact that this is a one-way trip that we are so fortunate to take, and that we know that there will be an end point. This person also added some bonus days, including Super Bowl Sunday, which is the Superb Owl Day. And I don't know what Turtle Day is. I do know that the first blossom would be, somewhere in here between February and March when you would see the first plants flowering. So that's one example. Here's a very complex, interesting one. This person has really remarkably um, posted the dates on the inside, various emotional qualities outside of that, the names that they have applied to these uh, holidays. Um, it looks like these are the precise times of the actual exact points of the celebration of the midpoint between, of either the solstice, the equinox, or the midpoint between. And then that goes up to months, and then seasons, and all the associated activities, and thoughts and memories that they have. So in autumn, they have woodland walks and crunchy leaves and incense and fire pits and board games. In winter, they have winter spice and hot drinks and sledging and indoor cycling. And then out beyond that, they have the actual physical day of what is that? 12/2. Oh, this person must be European because they put the months after the days. I was being confused about what that actually was, but there it is. So this one is very complex and really impressive to me. Here's another uh, similar kind of establishment. Really cool. Thunderstorms, shawls and sweaters, sunlight in bed, open windows, camping, late night walks. All of those are things to do to celebrate in a given season. And then this one is just so cool, and I can't speak to it very much, but it is an Afrocentric Wheel of the Year that was created by something called Spirit Roots. And I can't explain what these things mean, but the fact that this person developed this very culturally specific uh, Wheel of the Year for folks of African ancestry is just really impressive to me and super cool. I I literally jumped up and down when I saw it. I thought it was so cool. So that gives you an overview about what the Wheel of the Year is and what the kinds of options and alternatives are. And I really encourage you to start with a blank slate and create and celebrate. Figure out what these holidays mean to you and why they're important to you, and how you'd best like to celebrate them. And then go out and celebrate them. Either do it yourself or do it with friends and loved ones. Either way.